Who killed masculinity in video games? I'll tell you who killed it. Blizzard. Oh my god.
Does anybody else feel like masculinity has slowly been drained from modern video games?
Yeah,
I was looking
do.
at recent staff photos of Ubisoft and Halo Infinite developers, and it's all starting to make sense. It's a bunch of fat, white, liberal women. And white, liberal women have no interest in masculine, manly, male characters.
So I was at home, watching some Asmongold YouTube videos, when I stumbled upon one where he reacted to a video about masculinity in video games, or rather, the lack of it. The video was from Andy Pants Gaming, and while the guy made some good points, it got me thinking, is it just straight, white male gamers who are upset about this? Hello and welcome to the Explain It to Stupid channel. This is my first video, and the goal here is to break things down in a way that even the most clueless people can understand. These days, it seems like young, possibly still figuring themselves out game developers, artists, and writers are entering the industry and waging some kind of self-imposed culture war on sexuality in video games. And it's not just games. It's happening across all media, from movies and TV shows to anime localizations.
Dragon Maid Localizer gets asked about how she responds to all the criticism regarding the localization.
Okay.
Well, I'm kind of scared to ask this question now because I don't want to bring down the room. So
okay.
This is
Uh-oh.
directed at Jamie, but all of you can answer.
Go,
all
Jamie,
of you
go. I'm
have,
excited
like,
about it. Like,
So
I'm
Funimation
Jamie.
has come under, let's call it, criticism for how they choose to adapt their scripts for
like
a couple
unnecessary
of shows.
hate. Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. Oh, unnecessary hate. Got it.
you unfairly.
Thank you.
So how would you like to respond to that kind of criticism?
To the
particularly-
criticism, like, I have a vagina, deal with it.
What does your vagina have to do with translating Japanese correctly? Now, don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem with LGBTQ or feminist media. But when it feels like almost every piece of new content is centered around either feminism or LGBTQ themes, and there's nothing left for masculine men, we have a problem. Look, you've taken traditionally masculine IPs and completely overhauled them, leaving us with nothing to look forward to in entertainment. Then you get upset when we don't buy your product. But let me ask you this. If your products are so great, why isn't the LGBTQ or feminist community buying them either? Could it be that the problem isn't masculinity, but that your product just isn't that good? First, let's talk to the LGBTQ community. Are you satisfied with the media being produced today? It seems like every gay male character is portrayed as a black, Asian, or Latino femboy. Are they trying to say that there are no white LGBTQ people? And why is every gay guy some kind of femboy? Does anyone else see the issue here? Even Asmongold had something to say about this.
Almost all of these franchises have either been killed off, turned into multiplayer games, or went woke. I often wonder why so few modern games appeal to me, and I think another big reason is this. Everything is just so gay now. Compare the games I just mentioned to the modern trash we have to deal with in Overwatch and Apex. Almost every character in these new games is either gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, or something else.
I think this is an issue, but it's not probably as big of an issue. What is an issue is the fact that they try to like ride off of it. Like, for example, like with Concord or like with Overwatch. I think that's the issue, is that in a lot of times they had characters that were gay or they had some sort of other type of orientation, but they didn't use those characters as a mascot to virtue signal that they care about these types of issues. I think the problem that people really have is actually not with any character's orientation. I don't think anybody really cares about this character because he's gonna be talking about this, and I guarantee you're not going to be seeing a slide of Dion from Final Fantasy 16. You're not going to see that. No, you know why? It's because the character wasn't created in a cynical, performative way. And also, like, this is another big issue, and I think you can see this with Suicide Squad, is that they completely caricature people that are LGBT. It's not like this character is LGBT and this is like an after the fact. Like Soldier 76, I thought was good. It's like, yeah, by the way, he's gay. Okay, yeah, fine. Doesn't really have anything to do with it, but yeah, sure. But like, the issue is that they try to use these characters as mascots to promote their own virtue. And I think that a lot of people can perceive that. I know that I perceive that. And I find it to be incredibly obnoxious. So obnoxious. I didn't even know that. Yeah, because nobody cares. Nobody actually cares. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily about it being gay. I think it's about the performative nature of it. Because if you go back, you'll probably see a lot of instances where like diversity or, you know, a strong female character like Cortana is a great example. Like Cortana, nobody ever thought about Cortana as like, oh yeah, we have to have a woman in like the story for Halo. People just liked Cortana because she was part of the story. So the Tomb Raider, stuff like that, right? And so it's the issue that, and I think this is a big problem with Western developers, because you can see this, like Eastern developers never have this criticism. It's always Western developers. And I think that also like the reason why it happens is because people perceive the way that they behave as inauthentic. And I'll give you an example of a difference in like a Western development game. Baldur's Gate 3. You can change, you can have a dick, you cannot have a dick. You can have whatever you want and look however you want. You can have sex with any character and nobody ever cares about it because the game is seen as an authentic work of art. Whereas when you look at the Assassin's Creed game, it does not seem like it's authentic. It seems like it's performative. It seems like it's made with the intention of like, look at us. We are this like, you know, forward-thinking group of people. That's what the issue is, right? And you pick the experience. Yeah, you pick the experience. Like Cyberpunk too. Yeah, Cyberpunk, and it totally makes sense. You're arguing semantics. It's 100% right. Well, what I'm saying, I'm not. It's not semantics, because I don't think that people have a problem with the actual characters. I think that they have a problem with the way these studios portray the characters, because they do it in a caricatured way that's disrespectful and it's self-aggrandizing. That's the reason why people don't like it. Nobody said Sergeant Johnson in Halo was DEI, okay? Nobody fucking said that. And by the way, this isn't current cultural brain rot. If you go look at the Space Marine 2 trailer, you see a black guy, an Asian guy, and a white guy. They're all Space Marines. And they're like, what are we going to do? Are we going to kill him? Yeah, let's kill him. If you read the comments down below, there's nobody saying, oh yeah, great, more DEI. Nobody actually thinks this. It's about the way that it's presented. That's the problem. The problem is they're stereotyping. Yeah, like adding in Mrs. Freeze and she just looks like your traditional like butch lesbian. How disrespectful. It's insane to me. It's awful.
To put things into perspective, I decided to look up LGBTQ male celebrities who are openly proud of their identities. I came across a website called The Wrap that listed the names and photos of Hollywood stars who are proudly LGBTQ. Now, I don't know the details of each person's sexual orientation, but let's take a look at some real gay or bisexual men. Zachary Quinto, Neil Patrick Harris, Jim Parsons, Guillermo Diaz, Ian McKellen, Matt Bomer, Elton John, Cheyenne Jackson, Colton Haynes, Elliot Page, Adam Lambert, Ben Whishaw, Wentworth Miller, Ricky Martin, Sam Smith, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, Barry Manilow, George Takei, Ezra Miller, Dan Levy, Sean Hayes. This is what real gay or bisexual men look like, far from the stereotype virtue signaling and, frankly, racist garbage being pushed by the entertainment industry today. Now let's talk about LGBTQ representation in media. The current wave of woke ideology in modern media seems to be forcing representation down our throats, as if the LGBTQ community has never received fair representation in the history of entertainment. But that's just not true. Do you know when the first instances of gay, lesbian, and trans representation appeared in movies? I can tell you, the first representation of a lesbian in an American movie was in Dracula's Daughter from 1936. The first representation of a gay man in an American movie was in The Maltese Falcon from 1941. The first representation of a bisexual man was in My Hustler from 1965, and the first representation of a trans person was in Glenn or Glenda from 1953, at a time when it was actually illegal for a man to cross-dress as a woman in public. I'll link this information below for anyone interested in exploring the history of LGBTQ representation in cinema. If you truly believe that we haven't been pushing boundaries in this area long before you or I were born, then you're completely mistaken. But perhaps you media writers see yourselves as revolutionaries, breaking down barriers for the LGBTQ community. You're actually about 19 years too late for that. Imagine a wall behind which are LGBTQ haters, the type who are often gay themselves but are so conflicted with guilt that they lash out at others like them, unable to cope with their own attraction to the same sex. You all think you're chipping away at that wall with your modern, woke media, but that wall was blown up by a metaphorical big gay nuke 19 years ago. What am I talking about? Back in 2005, a movie called Brokeback Mountain came out that played a pivotal role in normalizing gay relationships. This film wasn't about flamboyant stereotypes. It was about two masculine cowboys who had a secret love affair while married to women. It depicted two ordinary-looking, straight-appearing men in a genuine love story. The film was impactful. It included scenes that could only be described as soft-core gay erotica. The director's approach was bold, and it made waves within the Christian community. Despite the controversy, Brokeback Mountain was a massive success, with a modest budget of $14 million and a box office total of $178 million. Many of those who opposed LGBTQ representation were too busy secretly acquiring copies for themselves for frappe material. In the same year, Rent also premiered, marking a significant shift in LGBTQ media. Unlike activist-driven content, Rent and Brokeback Mountain succeeded because they were genuinely compelling stories. They weren't just about pushing an agenda. They had interesting narratives that resonated with audiences. So let's dive into the history of LGBTQ representation in video games. A lot of people think that modern media is just catching up with LGBTQ representation. But did you know that video games have been including LGBTQ characters for decades? For instance, in 1985, The Legend of Zelda was released, and while it wasn't overt, some fans have interpreted the character of the old man as an early representation of a transgender character. Although this wasn't explicitly intended by the creators, it's interesting to see how fans have read into these characters. Then in 1988, Super Mario Bros. 2 featured a character named Birdo. The game manual originally described Birdo as a male who thinks he is a girl, and preferred to be called Birdetta. Now, this portrayal wasn't exactly groundbreaking in terms of sensitivity or accuracy, but it was one of the earliest attempts at including a character with a gender identity issue. It's important to remember that these early representations were often limited by the societal norms and understanding of the time, but they laid the groundwork for more complex and respectful portrayals of LGBTQ characters that we see in games today. So before jumping to conclusions about how modern media is handling LGBTQ representation, it's worth acknowledging the history and evolution of these portrayals in video games. The landscape has certainly changed, and while there's still progress to be made, the roots of LGBTQ representation in gaming go back quite a ways. Now let's address the feminist community. What is going on here? Do you know who Andrew Tate is? It's bizarre because some of the rhetoric I'm seeing is actually reminiscent of what he says, just from the opposite side of the coin. But it's weird because you also act like you are in an abusive relationship and don't want to leave. Let me break it down for you. You're not going to change what men find attractive.
I can change all men to like fat, ugly women. Why don't they like my game? It's full of girl bosses and ugly women. Why do they hate it? I hate men, but I don't want to leave because I love men.
You're not going to alter fundamental preferences overnight. Whether it's a plus-size model or a supermodel, people will be drawn to what they're drawn to. Look at the fashion and luxury industries. They haven't moved away from supermodels because they understand what most people find appealing. Video games, at their core, are about fantasy. If you don't provide a compelling fantasy that resonates with your audience, they won't buy your game. It's really that simple. In the end, it seems like 2 + 2 does indeed equal 4. If you want your game to succeed, you need to understand your audience and create something they want to experience. It's not about changing tastes, but rather catering to them effectively. And let's face facts. Masculine straight men, masculine bisexual men, and masculine gay men, they all gravitate towards the same types of games. For all the talk of inclusivity, it seems like a lot of what's being put out is only catering to a portion of the LGBTQ community. Let's revisit that list of LGBTQ celebrities. Do they strike you as the type who would want to play as girl bosses and femboys all the time? Maybe some might, but many of them look like they'd prefer to sit down and play classic titles like Halo or Gears of War. So here's the issue. Your so-called inclusivity might actually be excluding a huge chunk of your potential audience. How can you call it inclusivity when you're effectively shutting out a large part of your customer base? It's not truly inclusive if it doesn't cater to a broad spectrum of tastes. Now, you might be wondering, who is this guy? Is he straight, bi, gay? Well, I'm a straight guy. I have no issues with the LGBTQ or feminist communities. In fact, I'd be more than happy to hang out with any of these LGBTQ celebrities, Matt Bomer, Zachary Quinto, or even Asmongold. Though just to be clear, I'd prefer it not be at Asmongold's house. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, isn't inherently a bad thing. It's meant to promote fairness and representation, and nobody's against that. But weaponizing DEI against straight, masculine men is where the problem lies. That's not what DEI was meant to be about, and it shouldn't be tolerated. Now, this last message is for all you sexually repressed, probably gay, shame-ridden straight guys who hate the LGBTQ community. Let me put things into perspective for you. I want you to look at this picture. This is Matt Bomer. Look at him. This is a good-looking man. Now, just for the sake of argument, let's say that Matt here, an out-and-proud LGBTQ actor, isn't bi, but gay. Just an example. I don't know his exact orientation, but if you're straight, should you hate the fact that this man is gay? Hell no. Do you really want to compete with this guy for a woman's attention? Look at yourself, then look at him. You should be celebrating. Every gay guy that comes out safely is one less guy hiding behind a relationship with a straight woman. Any straight man who's ever fantasized about having a harem should be welcoming gay men with open arms, because that just means more straight women for you. Do the math. Less competition equals more opportunity. Why would you want to mess that up? All right, let's bring it all together. We've talked about how modern media and gaming have shifted towards certain trends that aren't resonating with everyone, especially when it comes to masculine representation. It's not about rejecting diversity. It's about finding balance and making sure that everyone, including straight, bisexual, and gay masculine men, still have content that speaks to them. We discussed the LGBTQ community and how media often portrays them through stereotypes rather than the full spectrum of real people. Whether it's in movies, TV shows, or video games, representation should be about authenticity, not ticking off boxes. For the feminists out there, remember, trying to change what men are attracted to or fantasize about isn't going to work. Just like everyone has their tastes, so do men. Catering to your audiences is key. It's simple economics. If you want people to buy your product, give them something they want to buy. And finally, to those who still feel threatened by LGBTQ representation, think about it logically. Fewer guys competing for women's attention should be seen as a win for you. Why create conflict where there doesn't need to be any? In the end, it's about respecting different preferences and finding ways to create content that appeals to everyone without alienating anyone. Diversity and inclusivity shouldn't mean excluding one group to elevate another. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going.